Hey everyone, this is Pete Perusik, and I want to welcome you to this edition of the Weathered Athlete Podcast, a place for us to honor those athletes that refuse to go quietly into the night. As a weathering triathlete and a physical therapist, I will spend my time talking with those athletes that continue to make the necessary repairs and continue to move forward. They may have a few cracks in their foundation or a squeaky step, and their patinas may continue to fade, but they are no less glorious than years prior. In fact, I feel they have more heart and resolve as they have weathered and can provide the pathway to set the standard that we should all live by. My goal is to determine what sets these individuals apart from the rest of society. After the discussion is over, I encourage you to stick around and hear a breakdown from a physical therapist perspective of how this weathering athlete is able to keep moving forward. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your friends. Today I'm honored to be joined by Ultra Runner Bob Becker for mile number 10. He is the race director for the Keys 100 and the Everglades Ultra Trail Race. When it comes to ultra running, Bob's bio is incredible. His racing accomplishments have taken him all over the world. Bob is the current record holder as the oldest person at 70 to complete the Badwater Double, which includes climbing and descending Mount Whitney and an impressive total of 292 miles. Last year at age 74, he completed 230 miles, which is the current record at a race for the ages. His accomplishment at a race for the ages and the technique he used was one of the many reasons I reached out to Bob. I was in the early planning stages of attempting a 51-mile run in honor of my birthday this month and was interested in getting any advice on that technique. Today's episode was taped in 2 sessions, the first over Labor Day weekend while a race for the ages was occurring. We then had a follow-up conversation to review this year's race results and a few other topics. I hope you enjoy. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time with me.
Glad to do it, absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. When I was looking through your race resume, I'm amazed. You're incredible.
Well, thank you. I just keep putting one foot in front of another. That's about all it amounts to,
Hey,
when you're ambulatory at my age, it's I guess it's unusual. I don't know.
No, it's not. I'm amazed, but it's pretty extensive. It looks like you've been doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I love it. So I wish I could do more. There's a limit as to how many races I can do in a year, and people say to me sometimes, "What's on your bucket list?" And generally, I don't have much on the bucket list at all. What'll happen? Like yesterday, I was talking to a friend of mine and said that he's talking about a trail that runs the entire length, in this particular case, of Israel, that he'd like to run sometime. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "It sounds like a hell of an adventure." So, it's usually somebody who mentions something that just, wow, that sounds great, rather than having a long list, So, yeah, as long as I can keep doing it, why not, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think it's awesome. And you're right. There's always something else that needs to be conquered.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So thanks for joining me on this. Basically, we're just going to have a conversation. And I just want to try to pick your brain if you don't mind. We'll talk about some of the things you've done. But, this podcast is basically focused on people over the age of 50. What I'm trying to do is just to help motivate people that, look, no matter what's going on, maybe they're not going to go run 135 miles, but they can at least, get out the door and move and do something. And I think your story and other stories that I've had on the episodes it's inspiring, I think, for everybody else, and it's good for all of us to hear.
Well, glad to share whatever I can, and every once in a while somebody will tell me how inspiring it is to see an old guy like me do it, and that's enough motivation right there to keep me continuing. I can get people off the sofa and out the door. It's just exactly what you're doing, and I think it's great. So,
yeah. And I think, with this time of COVID, I think it's so difficult for everybody. And that's one of the things I want to, maybe we'll start with, as far as I know you're a race director for 2 races, is how have you handled just kind of this COVID landscape now?
Well, there are no secret answers to this stuff, right? So this year, actually my 50-mile race in the Everglades Ultras, 50 miles, 50K and 25K, was actually the last event held in a state park in Florida before everything was shut down for COVID. We were literally out there for the weekend in a pre-race meeting when word came down that the parks had all shut down. So we got the exception to continue because we really were all set up and ready to go.
Okay.
So we actually had that race this year, but my race in the Keys was in May, shut down. And it's a very difficult decision, but it was the right one. I made it early. I made it in May because, we get people from all over the country and all over the world. People have to plan. So I didn't think there was a real opportunity to reschedule it later in the year. First of all, no one knew how long the problem was going to exist. And secondly, the issue is always where do you find a date on the calendar that doesn't conflict with something, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, the Keys race is pretty unique. You're running across 40 islands and you've got, blue water on either side of you. How do you replicate that in a virtual format? I didn't get it, right?
Yeah.
So I said, nah, I'm not going to go the virtual route. And now that's since changed, and if you want, I can tell you about that. But
Yeah.
Now it's looking into next year and trying to figure out what we're going to be able to do and how we're going to be able to do it. And I don't know yet. I really haven't, for example, for Keys, I haven't reached out yet to the county, the state, or the cities because they don't know yet. Until we get a little more time under our belt, it doesn't make a lot of sense to propose anything. And I'd rather wait and know what we've got and then be able to promote a race where I know what I'm offering. I know what the race is before asking people to sign up. So, hopefully it'll be close to what we've done in the past, but, we don't know yet.
Yeah, I think time's only going to tell. I think everybody is pushed off to next year, and we hope, okay, maybe when we get a vaccine, things will open up. But I think even moving forward, I think for a year, 2 years from now, I think what we're used to, our norm is going to change. It's not going to be the same. Having all those people at the finish line, I think there's going to be extra precautions we're going to have to take. So there's just an extra layer, I think, of protection we're going to have for a while, which I still think we can put on events. I think we can get back to that day, and you'll see there are a few events going on here and there, and with spacing people out, not doing a mass start, but they're all smaller numbers. It just, you can't do the large events.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And again, talking about my race in the Keys, a big part of that is the social aspect of packet pickup the night before the race. And especially afterwards, we have a huge party that goes on for hours and hours, lots of food, lots of beer and everything else on the beach in Key West. That social aspect is likely not to be possible next year. So, but we still don't really know, but I think you're right. It's, and that really impacts the experience a lot. So, so we'll just have to see, but I do agree. But no, there are still a few races, and I signed up for a number of them this fall. I wanted to get a 100-miler under my belt. To have it on my resume when I applied to run Badwater next year, hoping I could run it again.
Yeah.
And everything was canceled, but I did find one, Pony Express 100 in Utah, that's on next month. It's very small, it's very remote. You have to have your own crew.
Okay.
But that's what I'm training for, and I will be running it with Lisa Smith-Batchin next month. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I know, because most of them have been canceled. I had a couple friends that were doing some, and they've all been put off till next year. It's interesting. Right. 2 weeks ago, and I don't think I told you when we talked, is, I have a friend who's a race director, and, he's the same thing, struggling as all the things been canceled. So he came up with a race, basically the ultimate social distance is, we found it was a 12-hour race. You could do a 6-hour or 12-hour, and we found out a couple hours before the race where the start was, and then the goal was to get as far away from that start within the 6 or 12 hours, going in any direction you wanted to. And it didn't matter how many miles you went, it was all by the GPS, by the crow flies.
Love it.
So it was great. Now, most of us ended up taking the same route, but it was pretty much social distance here. We're going to start you here and just scatter, just go in any direction.
That is fabulous. I love it. Was everybody self-supported or?
Yeah, it was so
crew or?
No. So what happened, you had two options. You can either do it aided, where you actually could use your GPS, which is what I did with a friend. And we ended up going 6 hours, got 26 miles. But as far as the crow flies, we only made it about 23. But it was, because you have to go by the crow flies to get that far. So you could wander in circles all day long or all night long and not get anywhere. So you had... So you could either be aided, where we could use the GPS, or you could do it unaided, where basically you had 2 hours to figure out your route, and then you had you could go to the stores, you could hit gas stations, but you were pretty much on your own, carrying your own stuff. It was interesting. It was a great event.
So you try to find basically a straight road and keep going. Is that the idea?
That's the goal, is to find as straight a road as you can. Now the problem is here in central North Carolina, it's pretty hilly, so you're up and down a lot of hills for the straightest route. But it was a great event. It was fun. I think we had a good time. We had a couple people that in 12 hours made it. 42 miles, I think, was the most they made by the crow flies, but they almost did 50 miles in that time frame to do it.
Yeah, that's great. You're in central North Carolina, but that doesn't look like central North Carolina behind you.
No, that actually is. My mother-in-law lives in Englewood, Florida, which is north of Port Charlotte. So
yeah, sure.
We go down every now and then to visit her. So I always have to take my bike and bike down to the beach and have that nice little beach picture in the background.
Okay, so that's not live. All right, fair enough.
No, it's not live. I wish it was.
So right, well, I'm down in Fort Lauderdale. It's pretty hot down here, but still, it's why not go to the beach if you can, right?
Yeah. So how long have you been doing the Keys race?
This would have been our 13th year. So the actual first year was 2008, but in 2007. 5 of us decided to get down there and run the length of the Keys to see if it would be viable for a race because it was nothing. There were no ultras down here in South Florida.
Okay.
So we did, and we concluded, yeah, this could be something. And having no idea what we were getting into, I went ahead and put it on in 2008 for the first time.
Okay. What are your numbers like? How many do you usually get?
We generally have 1,000 to 1,100 every year.
Okay.
We've got like last year, meaning 2019, I think we had about 265 people registered for the 100-miler. Then we have a 50-miler and a 50K and a 100-mile 6-person team relay.
Okay. So
it's that combination. And we were going to add a 50-mile 3-person relay this year. It's never got off the ground, of course, but basically that's it. That's the mix of distances.
Okay, that's good to know because it's funny. I have a couple friends. They've done Moab 100 and Antelope Canyon, and we're always looking. They're always pushing, saying, "Hey, let's go do another one." And so when I saw yours, I'm like, "Hey, this may be something we may need to look at because I think it's going to be easier sell to our spouses and to our families to go to Key West than to like go in the middle of nowhere."
Well, Key West is a wonderful place for a little R&R, no question about it. You were asking about my races. And I said earlier that I just didn't think a virtual race made any sense for the Keys. But actually what's happened over the last couple months is I kind of changed my mind, but thought that I would have to create a differentiator for the Keys that would somehow separate it from most of the other virtual races, like, circumnavigating Ohio or something.
Yeah.
So I started working with a friend of mine on a video, actually running the entire length of the Keys, using video on foot or riding a bike, using aerial drone footage, and then inserting in certain spots along the way video clips and still photos from previous races. So the idea is as you watch the video, it's very much immersive, so that you look around and you see people and you see what would have been going on if in fact you were in the Keys running the race. So what we've done is we just Tuesday, September 1st, opened registration for what's called the Keys 100 Experience.
Okay.
And we've taken this video and divided it into 10-mile segments, each one of them about 4 minutes long, basically aid station to aid station if you were running the real race. So you start in Key Largo. The first video takes you 10 miles down to Coral Shores High School. Okay. And you're actually watching what would be going on if you were out there in the race. So the idea is you watch the video, you kind of have this vision of what the Keys looks like in your mind.
Yeah.
You go out and run your 10 miles wherever you are, come back and then do the second 10 miles.
Okay.
And we're offering you can do it in a regulation 32 hours or 10 days or 50 days.
Okay.
So it gives a lot of people, fast, slow, and total slow walkers, a chance to experience this. And I only mention it because we've got a little 1 minute, like a little teaser video that gives you an idea what it's all about, that I'd love to send you the link to, so you and your friends can take a look. It gives you an idea what the race itself is about.
Okay.
Never mind the virtual race.
Absolutely. I love it. So how would people register for it?
Go right online to you can go right to keys100.com.
Okay.
And just look at the main menu line. It says the experience, and just click on that. So, and it does what a lot of these other virtual races do, where you can actually track your time and your distance on run sign up, see where you stand, and see where you are on a map of what your progress is on a map of the Keys. But because it's the Keys and it's there's so much water and it's so interesting and different, it really is. I think it's going to be a very different kind of virtual experience than most others, and swag's kind of cool too. So.
Hey, I love it.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box, I think that's the way that we're all going to get through this. And I love doing stuff like that. So, okay. Yeah, definitely. I'll take a look at that. And
please do. Yeah.
I will. So when did you get started doing ultras, I guess? It looks like you've been a runner for a long time, but.
Yeah. Well, I played sports my whole life as an adult. I really didn't run. I ran the mile in high school, and then, I stayed in shape and went to the gym, ran a little bit, but I didn't race at all until really I moved to Florida just shy of 20 years ago, and I ran a couple of 5Ks down here, but that's all. And then in 2002, I had some friends in Minnesota where I had been living before we moved here and said, hey, we're going to run Grandma's Marathon. Why don't you come up and join us?
Yep.
I said, okay, well, it sounds like a chance to party with my friends. So literally went out and bought a pair of running shoes and asked the guy in a running store, what do I do now? And he said, well, call this guy, John Hall. He runs a marathon training group and he'll get you ready. So I ran Grandma's in 2002 and I ran well. I qualified for Boston. I said, okay, I got to do that. So I ran Boston in 2003 and I was training with a different group, one of whom said to me the following year, did you ever hear of the Marathon de Sable? It's an ultra marathon. And I said, no. I said, what's an ultra marathon? I went home and checked it out. So 2005 was the next year of MDS, Marathon de Sable. And I said to Jared, my friend, the following week, aren't you turning 40 next year? He said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm turning 60. Why don't we go do that as a birthday present? And that's kind of how it happened. So I ran MDS as my first ultra in 2005. That was it. So it was 15 years ago.
Yeah. And that's in the Sahara, right?
It is. It's in Morocco in the Sahara, yeah. And it's a stage race that I love stage races. They're great.
Okay.
I just totally fell in love with the sport, with the camaraderie, with just the whole vibe of it. And I never, other than using marathons as a training vehicle, I never did a marathon again. I just went right to ultras and stayed with them.
Okay. So how many times did you do Badwater before you decided to do the double?
I did Badwater 3 times, and the third time is when I did the double.
Okay.
So I did it I did the race as the first half or the first part of it. So a lot of times people do the double and they don't incorporate the race, but that's what I did. So I ran the race and then summited Whitney and then went back to Badwater base. And that was 5 years ago.
Yeah. You were 70 when you.
I was 70. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I became the oldest guy to actually finish the original Badwater 146 route as well as double. So, and I want to go back next year. The oldest guy to ever finish the race itself was 75. It's a Brit, Jack Dines, and I'd like to break the old age record. So, hopefully I'll get lucky and get in, and that's what I'd like to do. That's my next goal.
Okay. What was your experience of doing that event?
Oh, I love Badwater.
Yeah.
I just love the race. It's very well done. You only have 100 runners, and it's very, very fine runners, which certainly doesn't include me. But middle and backpackers are out there struggling to get it done, and it's just everything a race ought to be. I love it.
Okay, yeah, it looks like a pretty cool event. Other than it looks like very hot too.
Well, it is. I mean, this will actually be because no one went this year because it was canceled, but this will be my 14th straight year out there, either running or crewing for somebody or volunteering.
Wow.
I don't miss it. I mean, it's just great. It's a great race. And I'd recommend if you ever get a chance to crew for somebody, you should do it. You'll get it once you have that opportunity.
Yeah. So race for the ages. So how did you, I know you did it the second year, right? Because it should have been happening this weekend, I believe.
It is. It's happening right now. Actually.
So it is still happening. I didn't know.
Yeah, it is happening. It's a smaller field, but it's happening. Yeah.
Okay. So how'd you see that, and how'd you get involved with that?
I think last year was either the 4th or 5th year.
Okay.
And it's one of Lazarus Lake's races. Gary Cantrell, actually, his wife really kind of manages this one. But actually, Mike Melton, who times that race, and he's the ultimate ultra marathon race timer around the country and times all my races. Mike mentioned it to me.
Okay.
And I thought about it, and the more I looked at what it was, I thought I might be able to do well.
Yeah.
And when I decided to run the race, I really targeted the notion of being able to win it and actually even set the record.
Okay.
I'm very realistic about my limitations, what I can and can't do. And when I thought about the how that works, I felt I developed a strategy that I thought might work if all the stars aligned, and it did. So for anybody that doesn't know about ARFTA, or a race for the ages, it's a fixed time race, but rather than everybody gets 12 hours to see how far you can go, the number of hours you have is equal to your age. So at 74 last year, I had 74 hours to do this thing, see how far I could get. And that's kind of the whole point. So it developed, you have a lot of older runners that run this thing. And I thought it would work for me. It was a 1 mile, 1 mile paved loop. Basically, you keep going till your brain dead, and that's kind of I'm halfway there anyway, so no problem. So I just developed this. In fact, you had asked me when we were talking about doing this about my strategy, and I knew I'd probably wind up running about half, walking about half. And instead of just running until I couldn't run anymore and then doing a death march, I decided to break it down and do literally a 1 minute run, 1 minute walk. I started training with that. What I found was that I could keep a faster pace running the 1 minute because I was recovering very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I was able to stay consistent and keep that up the whole time, 230 miles, 74 hours. It just worked for me. And so that's what happened. It was, it was a good day.
Yeah. So you've never done that before, that race? No.
The closest thing I've done is I did a 24-hour race called Icarus Ultra Fest here in Fort Lauderdale. Similar idea, but no, I've done a couple of 12-hour races, and I actually was a race director for a 24-hour race a few years ago. But no, never done anything like that. No.
Okay. And then as far as like the 1 minute run walk, have you done that since, or is that the only event you've done it with?
No. Well, what happened was about a year and a half before, the last time I ran Javelina 100. If you're familiar with Javelina, it's a multiple loops. But the last loop I was struggling, excuse me, and I just kind of fell into a, 1 minute run, 1 minute walk cadence. Just kind of happened. And it carried me through that last 20 or 25 miles. And I thought, well, that's something to keep in the back of my mind. So that's what I decided to do because at ARFTA, because I knew I'd be out there for so long. And I am going to probably use that when I do this race, this 100-miler in the Utah desert next month, that or something similar to it. I haven't had that much time to train this year, and I think for me that's going to probably be a good solution, but we'll see.
It's interesting. So, when I first saw your story and saw that's what you did, and we had talked that, on this month, I turned 51, and I have a friend who's got a race, same thing. It's a 1 mile loop. It's a 12-mile race. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll go out there and see if I can try to put down 51. And I'm thinking, I haven't been training as much as I need to at this point. And I'm like, I wonder if I'll try that. So I went out the first day and I didn't set my watch, and I'm looking at my watch every minute. I'm like, how did he do this? I'm just like, how do we do this? And then the next time I made sure I set my watch, and at least my watch vibrated every minute, so I didn't have to think about it. And honestly, it worked. I felt fantastic doing it. So we're actually doing we have Pilot Mountain here in North Carolina. Is basically, it's about 1,200 feet up and down. So we're going to go run that tomorrow morning with some friends. And I know part of it, I'm going to try to do that again just to it makes it so much easier because you can run faster for that brief 60 seconds. Anybody can run a minute, and then you're walking, and it's amazing how quickly you recover. And so I'll be curious tomorrow, and then really in a couple weeks when I try to do that, how that works. But it's intriguing.
Good, yeah. I mean, I don't think it really works. It'd be interesting to see how it works on a hilly or mountainous race.
Yeah.
I mean, that really, for me, it would be more like for flat territory.
Yeah.
Because if it's a really steep hilly race, I'm going to probably walk the ups and want to run the downs anyway. So, but on the flat sections, I mean, go for it.
Yeah. So we'll see. So how much sleep did you get during that race?
Not a whole lot. I went 24 hours and I did I can't quite remember, maybe 85 or 90 miles. And then I actually went back to the hotel, which wasn't that far away, to shower and sleep for a couple of hours. And I was probably gone for 3 or 4 hours altogether. That was the last time I left the course, but I had a little personal aid station set up, and I took some 20-minute naps. And I think at one point I would nap for about an hour and a half. That was it.
Okay.
Not a whole lot of sleep. It was all adrenaline.
Okay. So it felt pretty good then by the time you finished.
Yeah, I was ready to sleep then. But yeah, I mean, I felt better than I had a right to feel after that long. Yeah.
Well, that's good too. But you had a target in sight, so that's the other thing that without that 228 sitting there in front of you that you were trying to beat, I'm sure that also provided that nice little motivation that you got to keep going.
No question about it. And there were a couple of younger guys in their late 40s or early 50s, one of whom had won the race before, who were really fast. And of course, they started well after I did.
Yeah.
And they would, for every loop I did, they would do 3. Not quite. I mean, they were really fast. So the later it got, the more concerned I had that they were going to catch me, and that motivated me too to keep rocking and rolling, right?
Yeah.
And then we reached a point where it looked like they were going to run out of time, and they did. So I was able to slow down a little bit. But yeah, very interesting, very different kind of race.
Yeah. What was interesting to me when I was looking at the totals, that you were not the oldest person. There were 25 people older than you.
It was remarkable. When you go there, the oldest person starts first, right?
Yeah.
And the oldest person picks up bib number 1. The second oldest person, bib number 2. Well, I'm almost always these days the oldest person in the race or close to it. And when I picked up number 26, I could not believe it. 25 people older than me. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And the oldest I saw was 87, Donald Jans, and he did 109 miles.
Isn't that unbelievable? He never stopped.
Really?
Just never stopped. The guy was unbelievable. Yeah.
Really? So he just kept going the whole time?
He just kept walking. I mean, I think he must have taken some sleep breaks, but it seemed like he was always there. He wasn't very fast anymore, and he was plodding along. But boy, he was just the bunny, and he kept going.
That's amazing to me when I saw
very
that.
Impressive.
87 and 109 miles. I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah, it was really pretty good, pretty cool.
Okay, so have you had to deal with any injuries?
Yeah, in fact, I was scribbling down some notes, which I have in a Word doc that I can't look at because I'm looking at you right now. But, actually, Marathon des Sables, I actually wound up fracturing my femur. So I've had 3 major and 1 minor injury type things in the 15 years I've been doing ultras. So that was the first, and I came back home and wound up having a steel plate and screws put in my hip, and it was quite a long, slow recovery period from that.
Okay.
Then I started running again that winter, and then in early 2006, I found I had prostate cancer. So I had surgery to remove my prostate, and then there was recovery from that.
Yeah.
But then really nothing really happened until after ARFTA. I developed some pretty bad plantar fasciitis, and that kept me from running for a few months. And then I had my shoulder replaced this past February.
Okay.
And then, of course, COVID showed up. So,
yeah.
I mean, there were long periods where I had no real injuries, usual, bang yourself up a little bit, take some time off. No serious issues other than those things, fortunately.
Good. That's good. So how much are you running right now a week?
Not as much as I should.
Yeah.
Last week I ran about 60 miles, and this week it'll be just shy of 50. I'm trying to build my miles up a little bit because I've got 6 weeks until this race in Utah.
Okay.
Which kind of came upon me pretty suddenly. I didn't know about it. So, I won't be in great shape when I'm out there, but, we'll figure it out. I do some weights and core work about 3 days a week here at home.
Okay.
Don't dare go to the gym these days.
Yeah.
And, and I'm running usually 5, sometimes 6 days a week, and try to pick the mileage up some over the next 4 weeks before tapering a little bit.
Okay, what do you peak? So let's go pre-COVID before a race. How much do you think you ran a week?
Uh, Probably 70 miles, 75 miles, never much more than that.
Okay.
But also it's, part of that would be pulling a tire behind me as a training technique, or,
Okay.
It's totally flat here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but
Yeah.
there's a bridge not too far away, and back and forth over the bridge, climbing stairs, doing whatever you can to simulate hill running if there are hills in a race. So yeah, it's not necessarily just straight running, or it might be running on the sand. But that's about all the miles that I can do and not injure myself.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, for every major race I've ever done, Lisa Smith-Batchen has coached me for every one of them.
Okay.
I have complete trust in her training technique and how she adapts everything to the individual client. So, she has her training program for me that I stick to pretty religiously is not going to be the same as it would be for you or a guy 20, 25 years younger,
Yeah.
So yeah, that amount of mileage is about right for me.
That's good. And then, so as far as the heat goes, are you running all times a day? Obviously the heat's probably a good conditioner for you as well, but what do you do?
Yeah. I try to, I don't have a death wish either.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends on the race that I'm going to be doing, but mostly I'm trying to run fairly early in the morning, so it's not too hot.
Okay.
I may be done at 10, 11 o'clock. Most days, at least once a week, I also run late afternoon into the evening with a group, keeping properly distanced, but it's something we've been doing for 20 years.
Okay.
But I don't generally go out in the real heat of the day, unless it's going to be a hot weather race. Like for Badwater next year, if I get in, I'll do much more of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, just to condition yourself. So do you do a lot of split running? Like you running twice a day sometimes?
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
not a lot, but again, it depends on where I am in the training cycle.
Yeah.
But at least once or twice a week, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good. How about any cycling or swimming or anything?
No, I don't have a bike. I think you like taking your life into your own hands to bike down here on these roads.
Yeah.
I mean, plenty of people do, but I don't.
Yeah.
And I've never been much of a swimmer, so no, I'm just a boring old runner-only kind of guy. That's it. That and lifting weights, and that's about it.
Hey, that works though. That's good. And yeah, how about stretching? Do you do a lot of stretching?
I don't do anywhere near as much stretching as I should, to my everlasting chagrin and to hers. I used to do some yoga, hot yoga. I don't really do much of that anymore either. I know what I should do, and anybody listening, stretching really is important.
Yeah. And
if you're into yoga or can get into doing it, it's fabulous. But I don't do as much of it as I should, and somehow I'm able to survive without doing it.
Yeah, I think again depends on your range of motion and what you're doing. So if you're not all out sprints and taking big steps, you probably have enough range of motion to at least do the activity that you're doing. So it's just up the hills and things. It's good to have some flexibility.
Right. Well, and I am working out too, and that helps a little bit too. But I there's no excuse for not stretching. I mean, shame on me, right?
Yeah.
Because it does make a difference. There's no question about it.
So how about for you as far as nutrition goes? Do you follow any specific diet, or are you pretty much doing anything?
I pretty much do whatever I want to do.
Okay.
My diet's quite moderate. I don't eat a huge amount of meat, but I'm not a vegetarian either. I'll eat a lot of fish, and but a moderate diet seems to work for me.
Okay.
And I don't do anything really particularly special when I'm training for a race.
Okay.
And my weight tends to be pretty consistent all the time. I find what works for me in a race and stay with that.
Okay.
And, after a workout, I'll generally drink a container of muscle milk light, which gives me some fat and protein and a few calories. And that tends to keep me going. I mean, it tends to work.
Okay. And then I know you have a lot of races, but I'm sure not all go perfect. But as far as in races, you're pretty good with your nutrition. Do you have a lot of GI stuff?
No, I don't have GI issues usually.
Good.
And it's mostly because, I dialed in what works for me. And if I have a crew, like a race like Badwater or my Keys 100 race, for example, there's plenty of others, or access to my own aid station or support, I'll generally stick to something like this. Every hour I know I'm going to take in 200 to 250 calories. That's about all I can digest properly.
Okay.
And I'm going to drink, it's mostly going to be liquid or gels. So I'll drink half a bottle of Ensure
Okay.
every hour, which is about 130 calories and, again, some fat and protein. And on the other half hour, I'll have a gel or something else that'll give me another 100 calories or so. That's all the caloric intake I need. And then I'll generally drink water, sometimes Tailwind, usually water.
Okay.
But along the way, I'll stop and drink, Gatorade or some Tailwind or a Coke. So I'm picking up a few calories here and there and continuing to hydrate. And I use typically some type of a salt capsule like Salt Stick, or I use a number of different products. But I do it that way rather than getting salt and minerals through a fluid. Generally.
Okay.
And that works for me. And at night, try to get some ramen noodles and or some soup, and occasionally something solid, or chips or cookies, or junk food, or sometimes a peanut butter sandwich. It really just depends. But for me, it's pretty simple. Yeah. It works well. I don't have GI problems, and I don't get tired of eating this stuff. So that's what I go to.
That's good. How long did it take you to do the Badwater double?
Well, the race itself, I finished in about 40 and a half or 41 hours.
Okay.
And then it took the double is not like a race where you have a finite amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So when we started the next morning, it was, I think we started about 3 a.m, and we summited, got back down, very, very slow coming back. And we got lost once, actually. Got back about 1 the next morning. And I actually took an extra day to recover because my feet were really beat up.
Okay.
And we took our time getting back to Badwater Basin. So all in, it took about 7 days to from the start to the finish.
Okay. Yeah. So
we weren't trying to break a record.
Okay. Yeah. The goal was just to finish the time. So you did sleep a little bit in there. And so, okay. Yeah. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a continuous, I'm like, that's impressive. I wonder how long they would take to do that.
Well, people do it. But you need to sleep some. I mean, it's a very difficult race, and the amount of climbing is very significant. And Whitney's eminently doable, but it's not an easy climb. It's a lot of work. So, and you get to the top, and that's great, but you got to get back down. So it's and the heat the heat's after you, whether on both the way out and on the way back. So you need to be smart about it, unless you're really just trying to go for the record. So most people sleep some, yes.
Okay. So I saw that you've crewed for people that have run across the United States. You haven't done that?
No, I haven't. And at this point in my life, probably not on the bucket list. I actually crewed for Marshall Ulrich when he went across in 2008.
Okay.
Which was an amazing experience. And I love to crew for people. I do it whenever I can. And most years at Badwater, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So how about normally, how are you with sleep? Do you get a good night's sleep, or you?
Yeah, I never have trouble falling asleep. That's a real blessing, and I can sleep anywhere. People who tell me they can't sleep on an airplane, for example, I feel sorry for them, because what else are you doing on an airplane? So sleep is good. I usually sleep 5 or 6 hours a night.
Okay.
Usually not a lot more than that. Sometimes a little longer if I'm, sometimes a little longer. Generally, that's about right.
Okay. So you said you have a coach that's set up your training programs. Now, does she work in any sprint stuff? Or are you doing what are your training intensities like?
Again, it depends on the race.
Yep.
But generally, I'm only going to have Lisa coach me if I'm doing a real long, a major type of race. And it's not going to be it's probably not going to be a 50K. All right. Okay. So speed is generally not an important part of it. But I'll do more. I'll do some speed work, some pickups in the training process. Or, for example, I might have my strategy might be, to use the example we've been talking about, a 1 minute run, 1 minute walk sequence during the race. But I'll do much more running to walking in some of my training regimens, right? So I'm building more of the run side.
Okay.
And on Thursday nights, for example, I do a 5 mile run with friends, and that's a straight run. So I get, you break it up a little bit. You need to do that.
Yeah.
And, but no real sprint work like I used to do.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay. And again, yeah, for the long distance, you probably really don't need that. Are you watching your heart rate at all?
Early on, I used to. I don't anymore. Again, that has not been a real problem for me.
Okay.
And so it's just not one thing I pay a whole lot of attention to. I'll tell you that it's funny. Last year there was a local running group here, a training group, that decided to put on a 5K for its 20th anniversary as a training group. And they invited all the local area race directors to come out and run. And so I thought, I'm going to embarrass myself and go out here. And my goal was to try to run under 30 minutes, which is staggeringly slow.
Yeah.
But that was it. And I was able to do it. And I kind of actually felt I was pretty proud of myself. I did no speed work at all. Right. So yeah, it's pretty pathetic. But, I kicked it in at least 10-minute mile pace. Nothing else. 3 miles. Sad.
Hey, that's good though. Hey, but you can probably outrun everybody there all put together.
Well, I don't know about that. But, there's a certain degree of insanity that's involved as a prerequisite to doing this stuff. So maybe there's that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Like I said, I've just making that transition. I've worked my way up to doing an Ironman, and now I'm dabbling in heading that direction in the ultra. And I think you have to have a little bit of insanity. My wife just looks at me and says, "You're doing what? Why are you doing that? What's the purpose? Is this for charity? Yeah. It better be for charity." So,
It's always the first reaction. Well, I'll tell you, I have great respect for guys like you that do tries. It's just like you asked me earlier. I'm not a swimmer, and I haven't biked in a long time. And yeah, I think it's phenomenal. Good for you.
Yeah, anything that's going to keep me moving, and my goal again is to try to make some transition to what you're doing. Again, I'm not going to podium anywhere, but again, it's just I'm going to enjoy it, and one foot in front of the other, and the experience I think is the biggest thing of all. And I love the community, whether it's the triathlon community or even the ultra running community. It's incredible. It's the people are so supportive and so helpful and willing to, because I think we all have that little bit of crazy gene in us that's why we do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. And for me, it's been very gratifying in a lot of other ways too. I've run races around the world that I just never would have been to these places otherwise. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I ran a race. It's probably not, if you were looking at my resume on run sign up, it's not there. It's the Mount Gaoligong Ultra, which was in southwestern China in an area near the Burma or Myanmar border.
Okay.
And it happened to be an area that during World War II, my father flew over in B-25 bombers.
Okay.
So it was an area that held a lot of interest, and being there and being on the ground where literally 75 years earlier, if I looked up, my dad would have been there.
Wow.
Pretty emotional. And there are very few, there aren't a huge number of ultra runners anyway in China, but very few old guys like me.
Yeah.
So, and in that part of the world during World War II, that's where the Japanese advance was stopped and turned around with American and Chinese troops fighting alongside each other.
Yeah.
So they revere Americans there, just revere them. And it was an amazing experience. There were, 12 or 15 Americans among the people that ran that race. It was the first time.
Yeah.
And the way we were treated and the whole emotion of it, and having a chance to talk to those people about this notion of inspiring other old timers to be more active was, it's just a great thing. So, I've run there, I've run in Brazil, I've run in Greece, I've run in Morocco, I've run in Canada, places I probably, may or may not have ever gone to before. So
yeah,
that's one of the wonderful things about the sport too.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Yeah, I read that on your bio. It's on your race director bio for the Keys 100. I saw that. That is incredible. So do you have any special mantras or quotes that you use to get you through, especially with these longer races?
Yeah, I don't really have a mantra per se, but a couple of things. One of which is, I chose to be here. So when I'm having my bad moments, which we all do, you can't not have them in a race like this.
Yeah.
That's always a reminder to myself. This was my choice. And the second thing is to remind myself how fabulous it feels to cross that finish line.
Yeah.
That sense of accomplishment. You can't ever take that away. So, I've had my DNFs, I've had my bad moments, but those are the things I try to remind myself. And that's about as close to a mantra as I can get.
Yeah, that's good. So on your DNF, how do they affect you?
Well, they're very, very frustrating, of
Yeah.
course. I can tell you that I ran Spartathlon in Greece actually twice. And both years I got to about 40 miles and along with having terrible calf cramping, Charlie horsing.
Yeah.
And in that race, you have very tight time limits. There are aid stations every couple of miles, and there's a time cutoff at every single one.
Yeah.
So there's really no time to sit down and work out the kinks and recover. And so I ran it twice and never went back again because I figured, whatever it is about this race, it's just not for me. Maybe I'm not fast enough.
Yeah.
And the other biggest frustration actually was Western States 2 years ago. I wound up arriving out there, got off the airplane and got very, very sick. And it was like a flu, and it was all in my chest, and I was a mess. I mean, I shouldn't even have gone to the starting line.
Yeah.
And I was hacking, I had no energy. By the time I got 30 miles in, I was done.
Yeah.
So the total regret that happened, but there wasn't anything I could do about it.
Nope.
It was just one of those things. So that was probably the most frustrating ever because that, the likelihood of getting into Western again is pretty slim. So yeah, that was too bad. But hey, it's what happens on any given day, right? You never know.
It is, and I think that's the hard part. We've you got to live to fight another day. So not every day is gonna be perfect. So it's to know that it's not worth it because again, there's going to be another race, and again, you can always go back or you can always do something else. And honestly, the amount of races you have finished and done fantastic in, a couple here and there is that we're going to have those. They're going to happen sometimes. So.
The other thing, I know your audience is an older audience, so if I may suggest this, right?
Yep.
I've also learned to recognize what makes sense for me to do and what doesn't make sense. So for example, living here in South Florida where it's totally flat, it's really hard for me to train for a race like Hardrock, or Leadville, right? Yeah. And, I'll do a hilly race like, Western, I've done Oil Creek, I've done the Trans Rockies a couple of years ago. I mean, I've done hilly mountainous races, but they're not the best thing for me because it's really hard for me to train for them.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm better off training for flatter races, and also there are almost no trails here.
Yeah.
So I'm better off looking at road races or pavement type races.
Yeah.
If I lived in Colorado, it would be a totally different situation. So whoever is perhaps listening and thinking about this stuff, look at where you're able to train, what your strengths are and what you're able to best prepare for, and choose your races accordingly. That's what I would recommend. Yeah,
great lesson. I think that's perfect. Pretty much on my emails, I use the hashtag #MyMilesAre4 as a way to kind of reinforce why I do things. Why do you do the things you're doing?
Basically because I can.
Okay.
And I really mean that. All right. At my age, I'm still able to do these things, and I will continue to do so as long as I can. In part because I love doing it, and I love the running community. I love the camaraderie of the sport, and I have a lot of friends, and I love getting out there and seeing them. And then the other reason, as I said, was that if by doing it, I can inspire some other people to get some exercise and get out and move where they might not otherwise have done it. That's good enough for me.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
So at age 74 now, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Well, I'm actually 75. So, it's really hard to know. Can I keep doing this for another 10 years? I hope so. Yeah. But it's really hard to know. Next year, when I'm 76 again, my big goal is to run the Badwater series and try to break the age record at Badwater. And then I'm thinking about that, and I'm saying, well, what's going to happen when I'm 80? Yeah. What if I go to Badwater again? I don't, at that point, it just becomes a question of what my body will let me do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes my heart says one thing, and my body says something else. But again, as long as I can stay healthy and keep training and not make a damn fool of myself out there, I'm going to try to continue doing what I love to do. It's just a wonderful, wonderful sport.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you have a race for the ages, so the 87, so that you can put that out there that you got to try to get to be the oldest participant in that event.
I should only live so long.
That seems still incredible to me. Actually, I did have another question, but now I just
Sure.
lost my train of thought on that.
Right.
As far as people making that transition, let's say like me, I've done 38 miles is the most I've ever done. So this 51 next week that I'm going to try to do is another huge step forward for me. What advice do you have for those people that are thinking, I think I want to get into doing that? Maybe they're not in the 70, 80-year-old people. Let's think about in the even 40s and 50s that really I think that's probably the average age of most people that are doing this. What advice do you have to them?
Well, what I would not advise to run Marathon des Sables as your first ultra. Let me put it that way. Stage races are a blast, but maybe not the first time. So, two things really. One would be, pick a shorter distance ultra like a 50K or a 50 miler, and or something like a 12-hour race.
Yeah.
And get your feet wet. Get used to the idea of how your body reacts and what you need to do to stay properly hydrated and fed and all the rest of it. And then so build it up. Don't jump right into a 100-miler. I mean, people do, but it's probably not always the smartest thing. And then the other thing is, if you have an opportunity to crew for somebody at a longer race, like Badwater or like my race in the Keys or this Pony Express 100 that I'm doing next month. And there are quite a few races where the runner has to have a crew. And if you can work in a support capacity, not only are you helping your running friend, but you're learning a lot as well, especially for a longer race.
Yeah.
And many of them will allow you to pace as well. So you get to get some running in as well. I highly recommend that as really a great way to get to feel how a much longer distance will work for you. So for what it's worth.
Okay, that's good. So then I'm going to follow up that question then with when you've been a pacer. I know every runner is different. I've had people trying to push me through a marathon, and I'm like, don't even talk to me. I don't want to talk to you right now. But how is that delicate balance as a pacer of knowing how to push somebody and not push somebody? Because I think that's probably a fear for some people as they pace is like, one, am I going to slow them down? Or two, am I going to help them, be positive for them and not bring them down?
Well, pacing is not always the same thing. Okay, so for example, what you're suggesting and implying, which is sometimes the case, is where you're kind of out in front of the runner, trying to set the pace for the runner, keep them moving, and so on. That's one type of pacing. The other is where you actually run next to or even behind the runner, like at Badwater, you run behind the runner. So your job is not so much to keep them at a certain pace as it is to keep them motivated.
Okay.
Maybe talk to them if maybe they don't want you to talk to them, but to remind them what's going on. Pay attention to what the pace is like, and pay attention to what their condition is. If they start struggling, it's okay to walk. It really is, if that's what it takes. And in many of those races, you may be carrying a walkie-talkie or something where you call ahead to the crew to say, okay, next time we see you, this is what the runner needs.
Okay.
Have it ready so that we don't have to stop and waste 3, 4, 5 minutes, getting something to eat. Have it ready for them. Okay. Or as you get to your crew, the runner continues by the crew as you run over to the vehicle and pick up whatever it is that you need, whether it's a fresh bottle or a gel or whatever the heck it is, so that you're really crewing on the run, if you will.
Okay.
And you're called a pacer, but you're really crewing as well, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
So it's not always a function of setting a pace or trying to hold the pace for a runner.
Okay, so you're pretty much doing a little bit of everything, and I'm sure it's different all the time too. Every race,
right? And that's and it's important that that you're compatible with the runner, and you all have the same expectations. So if you're going to pace, what the runner wants. What's your job supposed to be out there?
Okay.
Because it can vary so much.
Okay. Have you, in your longer races, have you had hallucinations out there, which I know sometimes happens for these long distance?
Yeah. Yes. And at that point, it's time to just to go sit down and take a cat nap for 20 minutes to try to shake your head, loose, get yourself awake. So yeah, I've had that happen to me a number of times. And that, for me, generally a 20-minute nap is enough to, get me awake. And one time I had to literally do it twice. So I took a 20-minute cat nap. I started running within a half an hour or so. I started, basically walking in my sleep and hallucinating, and I had to take another 20-minute nap. Then I was fine.
Okay.
And I'll do something like take a 5-hour energy, which is like the worst tasting junk in the world. But for me, it really works to get to awaken me.
Okay.
And, some people drink coffee. I drink coffee, but not on a race because it goes right through me. But 5-hour energy for me works. So as you do more and more races, you find out the little things that work for you and don't work for you.
Yeah.
And all of that adds up to the greater likelihood of a successful experience.
Okay, that's good. Now, do you have any children or grandchildren or anybody else that does this stuff?
All of the above, but no. Other than my granddaughter who plays sports and runs cross country in high school, no. My kids missed that gene somehow. So they cheer on Dad, but same thing for my wife. I couldn't have a bigger supporter, but no, not her thing at all. So.
Yeah, it's funny. So now I'm to the point where I have to pick a venues where my wife wants to go. That way she goes shopping. She knows this is when you need to be at the finish line, and that way she can do her thing, and then she's there at the end. But that's a long day for anybody.
That's fair. It's a great way. It's a great way to pick your races. Why not?
Yeah, that's good. So
excellent.
Last question. As far as like your doctors, have they expressed any concerns about what you're doing? Do they even know what you're doing? I'm always curious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they know what I'm doing. And my primary care physician thinks now and always has that I'm completely nuts. And he just can't get it. Unfortunately, he's not a runner himself. If I had my druthers, I'd be searching for an MD who is a runner who would get it.
Yeah.
But I've been seeing this guy for so long that he really does understand. And I'm healthy. I don't take any meds. I'm fine. So. Yeah. It's not a real concern, and he keeps an eye on me, and I'm proactive about my health. So I have physicals at least 2 or 3 times a year, and it's all good. So yeah,
that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, because I think that's always the interesting thing when you have a physician or somebody who doesn't understand or doesn't know. Again, as long as you're healthy, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean he'll almost say sometime I'll mention something that I'm wondering if it's an issue, like my cholesterol it's not too high, but it's a little on the higher side. And he basically says to me, for most people, I'd start keeping a close eye on it. Not for you, or I have a little lung thing. I smoked when I was a kid, right? Yeah. So I have some scar tissue in my lung, and I said, is that something I should be worried about? And he said, some people I'd be keeping an eye on it. For you, no. So he gets it, and adapts appropriately, and that's cool.
Well, I appreciate you taking time with me today.
Enjoyed it thoroughly, Pete. And again, if you have a chance to check out, in fact, I'll send you a link to that the Keys 100 Experience virtual video, because I think you'll get a kick out of it. And I loved it. Thanks very much for your time.
Here's part 2 of our conversation. Actually, probably not a bad idea we follow up each other after ARFTA being completed.
Yeah, I just found out the results, and the guy who came in second to me last year with 212 miles won it this year with 211 miles. So, they just finished it up, and so good for him. It's good that they were able to have the race. It was smaller this year, but the fact that they were able to have it at all is good.
Yeah, pretty impressive. I pulled up the results last night, and
right.
Pretty incredible. 3 people over 200. I'm looking at them right now. And 211, then 201, 201. And that Donald Jans, it's amazing to me. He did 101.
I did it again. Yeah, he is. He's a machine. The guy's amazing.
Yeah, I saw Laz did it.
Laz did it last year, too. Laz did 65 miles last year.
Okay, yeah, he did 72 this year.
Did he? Wow, good for him. Well, it's funny because I was thinking about him last year, and one of the impressions I had was how totally laid back he is. he did 65 miles last year, just walking, slowly walking, and almost the entire time was just casually talking to people along the way. I mean, it was a totally a social event, and yet he still did 65 miles. I mean, it's just amazing. He's such an anomaly. The guy's a brilliant mind. He's not much impresses him. Nothing seems to faze him. It's like I think his attitude is, look, if you choose to do it, then just do it. Don't bother me. and he does the same. He just go walk a few miles, and then he do a few more. And I think he was 65 years old last year, and he did 65 miles. I think that's right.
It is because he was 60. He did six. It says he's 66 this year.
Okay.
So yeah, that's incredible. So have you met him before last year? Do you know him well?
I do not know him well. I'd only met him once before, and that was his. He has a mini version of. My mind's gone. What's his big race?
The Barclays. The Barclays Marathon.
But he has like a mini version of Barclays, in the fall, and a couple of years ago there was a big hurricane threat here in Fort Lauderdale. So actually, my wife and I drove up to Tennessee to escape the hurricane to stay with cousins of mine. And while I was there, that happened to be the weekend of this trip. And two of my running friends from Florida were running in it. So I decided to drive over and take a couple hours and drive over there just to, to cheer for him, really.
Yeah.
And I placed myself at an intersection where I thought the greatest opportunity would be to see him. And I was there for hours, and I never did see them. But I did see Laz, because that was a spot where he kind of put himself as well, so he could maximize the number of people he saw and communicated with. So I just started talking to him because he's good friends with Mike Melton, who times a lot of his races and times all of mine, and that's our connection. So yeah, he knew who I was as a race director, probably through Mike, but we'd never met before. So we talked for a while, and no, I don't really know him well. Just observation through the media, and then of course my experience last year when I did spend some time with him. So
yeah,
interesting guy.
He is an interesting. Yeah, I've watched the Barkley Marathon. The movie they have about him, and it's just the whole thing is just intriguing. I mean, it's so interesting on so many levels.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. We could spend hours just talking about it, but but so many of the things he's done have been totally unique and creative. They just really have. His backyard race, and even the race across Tennessee, and a lot of other things, just really totally unique, and so good for him.
I know. I think it's great. I love all this stuff, and it's so funny. All you do is everybody knows his name, especially in the ultra world.
Right.
Whether they've done any of your races, he's basically a legend. So I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, I wondered if you had looked at the results. So yeah, your record's safe, and
well, for 1 year anyway.
Well,
and I know Brad Compton, who came in second, I think, and he's no kid either. He did well. So big tall guy.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I was looking at the numbers, if you break it down, that guy who came in first, he did 3.7 miles per hour. And that's pretty significant. Everybody else is like 3.1 towards the top. So it's going to take someone in their mid to upper 60s to do something close like that to actually get it, other than get into their 70s where you have more hours, which is helpful, but it'll be a challenge.
Well, I don't know if you remember from our conversation the other day, but I mentioned to you that one of the things that motivated me to keep moving was that there were a couple of fast guys that were on my heels, and they were running much faster than I was. They eventually just ran out of time. Well, he's the guy who was the primary person chasing me. And, so, he was my rabbit. I had to keep ahead of him. So, no, you're absolutely right. He was much faster than I was, and he was again this year in terms of pace.
Yeah.
But, the hours worked against him, that's all.
Yeah, that's why. So he's just going to have to keep going, the rate he's going, a couple more years, I think he'll start putting some pressure on it.
No question about it. I had to do 250 or something for it to last very long. So now I'm, just the fact that it lasted 1 year is good. So, or maybe 2 now. So it's cool.
That's good. So I forgot to ask about, people that supported you. I know let's say for this race particular, since we're talking about it, what's your crew like?
I actually had 3 people that flew out from different places to support me, all running friends of mine. And one flew out from Orlando, was there for the first day. She could only stay one day and had to then fly back. It was just amazing that she did that. She's also crewed for me at Badwater. She was part of my double crew. Beth Stone is her name. And Caroline Cunningham, who used to live here but lives in the Salt Lake City area now, was there the entire time, as was Joe Del Lazaro, who was from this area. So Caroline and Joe are ultra runners. I mean, all 3 of them are, and are just very giving and giving people who are friends and very, very supportive. And Caroline is this consummate cheerleader. She's a great crew person because she really motivates. And I think she probably lent a hand to half the people in the race because, the way that's set up, you have a 1-mile loop, and we have our little aid station set up, personal aid station, right along the trail next to it. And she'd see everybody as often as she saw me, every mile. So everybody was friendly, and somebody needed something, she helped them as well. So it was a lot of camaraderie and really a lot of fun. But they kept me going, and they really did. They really motivated me. They had stuff ready for me when I needed it, coming by to save time. And there were a few times, actually a number of times, when, even though I didn't have any blister issues, but my feet were really banged up from pounding the pavement all the time. And, she or Joe, and particularly Caroline, massage my feet or, get some ice ready for me to ice them down. I just couldn't have asked for greater support than the 3 of them. It's phenomenal.
That's awesome. That's one of the cool things I think about these events. We talked about the pacers and people running with you, but really it's everything else. It's just them being there and giving you all the things you need and attending to every kind of issue you have. That's pretty cool. That's what I love about that sport.
Yeah. Well, and Caroline also ran, she and another friend, and the 3 of us ran Brazil 135 together. We ran the entire 130 miles, 142 miles. We had 7 bonus miles 2 years ago, but that's another story. We ran the entire race together.
Okay.
That was our plan, and we were actually able to do it. So, we're pretty good friends. And she was like Nurse Caroline. It was incredible.
That's awesome. So as far as like recovery, if you think about this point, let's say it was a year ago that you did this, how was it that night? How many days did it take you to get over, really going 3 days straight?
I slept a good bit. Shower was the first thing, and I slept quite a bit for the next day. And but then my wife had flown out to meet me out there, and I had the rental car that we had driven up to Tennessee in, and my cousins drove her out, so she was there for the end of it. I got some sleep, and then really about a day later, I guess is all it was. We got in the car and we drove the long way back to Fort Lauderdale by way of Birmingham. We wanted to go there and see the new Civil Rights Museum there. So, and I drove, so I was fine. But wow. I typically, and certainly then as well, I generally would not be doing any running for a couple of weeks. I just kind of give my feet a break from all the pounding. Sometimes a little longer. I might do a little walking, but mostly it's sleep and calories, and just trying to let my body recover. But it also depends on what the length of the race was. A 100-miler is not as well. It depends on the length and on the topography as well. And also what is next on the calendar. So if I have a race coming up anytime within a foreseeable future, I'm not going to let myself take too much time to recover so that I can kind of keep my conditioning to a point. But if I don't have a race for a long period of time, I might let myself go for a little while and then crank it back up again later on. So, give my whole body a chance to recover a little longer.
Okay. Do you do anything like recovery boots or get massages or use ice baths or anything like that?
I typically don't. Massage once in a while, but not as a regular course of events, which is probably a mistake. I'll use, when I say the stick, what the stick is? It's like a massage tool, I'll use that kind of self massage some, but usually not a whole lot. One thing I will do is I will do some walking so I don't stiffen up too much or stay too stiff. But No, there's no. I have no real specific routine. My body just really just needs to rest, and I come back pretty quickly usually.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's good. I always wondered that, when I think probably just your pace, and you're not going all out the whole time, which I think is an advantage too. You just kind of go in at a nice steady pace, other than, again, depending on the topography, how much,
Right.
hills you're climbing. As I transitioned to the Ironman, I felt so much better than I ever did when I did any marathons, because I'm trying to go fast and your body just, I could barely walk. And so I think, again, it comes down to speed. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's a very different thing being a middle of the pack and and trying to win the race. I mean, most of them. So it makes a big, and also whether you're doing a 50K or a 100 mile, it also makes a difference too.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Those are the things that I wanted to add in. Do you have anything else you wanted to add in?
No, not really. Other than I was thinking more deeply, I guess, about the experience at ARFTA last year, and I think I had mentioned to you that I went after the first 24 hours. I went back to the hotel and took a shower and slept for 3 hours. And I remember that I actually did wind up sleeping a couple of additional hour-and-a-half sessions during the balance of the race, and probably a few 20-minute cat naps.
Mm-hmm. But
there were those couple of hour-and-a-half sessions I really had forgotten about. So I got a little more sleep than I thought, but not a lot, but more than I had mentioned earlier, and I didn't want to be misleading. So, but again, you've got the adrenaline's pumping, and then later in the race, when you realize you're on target to really do something, and you got this guy flying around the course, man, that keeps you motivated. It just does.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, that is awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, Bob, for at least doing this again with me and just kind of tie up those.
Thank you, Pete. Anytime. And
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and were able to get some insight into how one weathering athlete approaches each day of training and racing to stay as injury-free as possible. I believe his biggest strength is his experience from all the races he has participated in and his work as a race director. As he states, he knows his limitations. Due to living in Florida, he tends to choose flatter races that suit his style and training conditions. He provides valuable advice for anyone getting into ultra running, including the value of being a pacer or being part of a crew to get your feet wet. His 1-minute run-walk method works incredible on a 1-mile looped or flat course. I utilized his technique yesterday and was able to complete 52 miles. And other than feeling tired from the mileage, I was still able to run the last 2 miles. So I appreciate his technique and his advice. Thank you for taking time in your busy schedule. If you find today's or any other episode inspiring, I ask you to consider to join our Patreon program. Details can be found at www.weatheredathlete.com. Also, please don't forget to hit subscribe to this podcast, share with your friends, give me a rating on iTunes, leave me a comment or drop me a line if you feel what it takes to enter the Weathered Athlete podcast. Lastly, no matter how you complete your miles, I encourage you to use the following hashtag, #MyMilesAre4, as a way to reinforce the purpose of those miles. As always, my miles are for the journey. Pete Barusik.